employees, many of us wear many different types of hats, and we get real busy, so we tend to forget about this piece of our business or this advertising piece of our business, and it's just not as effective as it used to be. So here are 7 tips to keep your website alive if it's dying or if it's already been dead. A question: how many things do you know that have been dead for over a month or even longer and can still be brought back to life? Well, the answer is, of course, not too many things, but your website can. So we're going to be talking about reviving your website. Some of these tips are pretty practical. Some are pretty common sense, but some of them we probably don't even think about or don't even make the time to implement these things. Number 1, who's your current audience? And a lot of people tend to think their current audience is mainly their users, their customers, their potential clients, but also you have to realize that Google is one of your number 1 customers or as part of your audience. And a lot of people don't really consider Google, but Google has made several changes because Google pretty much is still the number 1 search engine in the world. There's a lot of other search engines, and Google isn't the only thing, but they're one of the major search engines and components of your business, because people are going to search mostly on Google, and they're going to either bring up your site or they're going to bring up your competitor's site. So you obviously want to have a site that's valid to Google, and so you want to make sure that those different factors, Google can see number 1, I believe, at this point. Because number 1, Google has changed a number of things, including a long time ago, Google used to not really be a factor, but now since most people search, there's millions upon millions and millions of searches going on every single day, if not every hour. And Google's putting through their filters, their content, and everything else, the different types of keywords, the important things people are looking for. So Google factors in all these different things as to how active your site is. Are people going to your site? Has your site content been changed? Have you been updating it on a regular basis, or is it a dead website and it's very inactive and so forth? So it's important to know that Google is looking at your site, and it's basically going to serve websites up that are valuable to its users. Google doesn't really care about us, but we have to find a way to work with Google. So your audience, once again, is both Google and your potential clients. Well, a lot of people obviously know about Google Analytics, and they may have a bunch of other tools, because there's tons of tools out there that you can find all kinds of metrics and tracking for your website. And this is an important one, I believe, that people can look at on a regular basis, if at least once a month. And some people tend to have that idea still of set it and forget it, and they think their business stays the same. Well, if you look at your analytics or your metrics on your website, you're going to find out that different types of keywords people are putting into the search engines to find you. Or you're going to find out that maybe some of the keywords that people are finding you on, like in our example, Bauer, Dunham & Barr, we're going through a name change right now. We'll be BDB Marketing Design. But with Bauer, Dunham & Barr, we've had both phone calls and searches on our site for people looking for tennis shoes. And of course, we handle marketing, graphics, and web development, and all types of other services related. But we found out that people were looking for tennis shoes, they're looking for sporting equipment because they're thinking of Dunham Sports when they searched it, or when Google brought up some of the pages, we came up number 1 on some of those pages. So you want to definitely check out your analytics on a monthly basis to see if things are changing, what type of referral sites, who's referring to your sites. Is it Facebook? Are people coming from Facebook to your site? Are people coming from Google? Are people coming from Bing? Are they coming from other different types of sites? Or if you're a realtor, are they coming from realtor.com or some other association sites? You need to know those kinds of things. And of course, too, you can also find out what are the top landing pages on your site. And that's also key, too, because when we find out what type of landing pages or where people are mostly coming, which many times the number 1 page people are coming to is the About page or your home page. But if they're searching something very specific, if you are a let's say a service provider, and just like with Alan, who's hosting me, we have send out cards. If you're a service provider of that, and you find out people are mostly coming to your service page to find out what types of services you have or how this thing works, then what we can do around that is we can build in content. We can start talking and speaking the language. We can start putting more of those keywords or key phrases inside of the page to bolster up your page so you have a better chance of being found and it's more relevant. And of course, once again, Google's looking for relevant searches and where people are mostly going and hanging out at. And if you're hanging out more, if the audience is hanging out in a certain place, whether they're going to your site or your competitor's site, or if Facebook finds out that, man, these people are all going to this one YouTube video or this one person's YouTube page, then they're going to tend to serve up those types of advertisements or posts of that website or the Facebook post or Facebook page that's most relevant to everybody. So they'll show your site and other things more if it's more valuable. So that's one way also too to save some money if you're doing things like AdWords and other types of marketing services. You also have to speak to your ideal client's challenges. So on your website, it's important to talk about the challenges you have. If you're a travel agency, you want to make sure that you're talking to people's challenges about either finding the lowest cost or are they having a challenge trying to figure out some ideas and ideal places to travel in under 3 days. You want to speak to the things, maybe the top 3 items that you figure out about your industry and what your customers are looking for, what you found in your interactions with your customers that are really important to them. Or maybe it's a situation where they have a family that has maybe 5 people in that family. And as you know, or maybe you don't know, but many hotel rooms don't have that extra piece for that 5th person. Or if you go on a cruise, they only have a room maybe for 4 people. And you have to sometimes bump it up to a suite or something way more expensive if you have that 5th or 6th person in your family and you're trying to travel. So those are key things that you want to speak to those challenges of what your customers have. You also want to have specific targeted content on each of your web pages. So your home page is not going to have very specific content on it necessarily, but if you, in our case, have a web design business or you focus on web design or Google Analytics, then maybe you might just have a page about how to use Google Analytics or what types of things you do. Once again, if you're a realtor, maybe you have a page on how the process works to buy a house or to sell a house, and you have 2 completely separate pages. So when people search on Google or Bing or wherever they're searching or Yahoo, they can immediately go to that page because that page has more relevant content to that topic. If you have, like I've seen some websites, they only have 1 page and they're like 20 pages long, so you have to scroll and scroll and scroll forever. A lot of these are kind of infomercial or sales sites that are trying to sell a product or service. But if you see those aren't going to come up very well in most cases because they have too much content. They talk about everything, so they don't really talk about things very specifically. So you want to have some pages on your site that really drill down pretty deep on the one topic that you're talking about. Also, you want to find out where your audience hangs out. Do they hang out on Facebook? Are they on YouTube? Are they on Twitter or Snapchat or Instagram? Are they in certain other types of sites, whether it's, other affiliation sites or marketing services or whatever they do. But find out where they are, because if that's where they are, you can kind of tailor your website and content to, once again, speak that language of the language they're talking about on that specific site that they're on or the specific areas that they're in. Number 2, you want to simplify your site. One of the big topics of the last 5+ years or so has been improving user experience. And I was down in Orlando earlier this year, Orlando, Florida, and I used this service called the iRide Trolley. I went on their website, and this is kind of their desktop view of the website. Number 1, it's kind of busy, and it's not the most simple site to use. It kind of has old architecture, and I don't think it's been updated for quite some time. And it's not mobile friendly. So if you see on the left, they have that menu and it has tons of things, and just looking at it, it's like, oh, I don't even know if I even want to look at that to try and figure out where I need to go. So they could simplify this. Another issue here is that they have a lot of colors on the site. Part of that, maybe they can't help very much because they're trying to advertise and look colorful and be interesting to the person who comes there, because they're a simple, trolley ride service that actually works very well, but just the website could use a lot more work and be more user-friendly. But it's too busy, has too many choices, which when you give people too many choices, they kind of get confused and they may get a little frustrated with dealing with this site. And of course, it doesn't have too much focus. If we go to their mobile view of the website, as you see, it does go a little bit mobile, but this is just about actual size as for my phone size of my screen. And as you can see the name of their site at the heading, but you can't even read any of their menu on the left side. They've also got all these other different types of, I'm assuming, advertisements or cross-marketing for these other companies or services that they offer. But there's no focus, too many choices. The fonts are very small. They're very difficult to read, and it's not mobile friendly. So these are different considerations. You need to realize that when you have a mobile site, when it goes mobile, which most people are searching on their mobile devices these days, so pretty much that's the view you're going to have, that you want to make sure that when it goes mobile, it's going to have a simple interface, it's clear, it's focused, the fonts are big enough that people can read and they don't have to scrunch their eyes or increase the screen size just so they can see it, which is poor user experience for people. And once again, I'm just going to go back real quick to their desktop view. It's better when in regards to fonts, but it's still busy, but it doesn't really have a mobile view in this case. Another example is from Michigan.org. They did a great job, I think, over the last few years of really putting out advertisements on the radio. I can't remember if there's advertisements on TV. I'm sure there are, but they've done a good job of doing a lot of research, putting a lot of money, I believe, into their site, and they've made it it's clean, it's simple. As you can see on this desktop view of a desktop PC, they have very few things that people can choose, so it's very focused and simple, and to me, pleasing to use. And pretty much they have one button on the screen that pretty much says, plan your trip. So their main focus is obviously somewhat marketing for Michiganders, but really it's marketing toward other people coming to Michigan and just planning their trip to Michigan of all the wonderful things we have here in Michigan to do. So once again, very simple and clean. You can read their fonts here, not much busyness, there's fewer choices, and there's a specific focus of planning your trip. On their mobile view of the site, if you notice, on the top right, they have their menu has gone into what's called a hamburger menu, or those 3 lines. Very simple for people to tap on. Whereas if we go back to the iTrolley site, you notice they had everything still listed on the left side, which created a ton of things for people to do. But in this case, Michigan.org did a great job, or Pure Michigan has done a good job of, once again, keeping their site simplified. Their fonts are readable, so you can still see that button in the middle of the screen, which is the main focus of planning your trip. And then if people need it, if planning your trip isn't what they're looking for, they can click on the menu, which is very simple. 2 choices here, menu or plan your trip, and you can move right along. So it's extremely very user-friendly. And of course, they got a nice picture there too also. So improving your user experience, extremely important. Clean up your website, and when you're on a mobile device, or when you look at your website on a mobile device, you want to make sure it is much more simplified and maybe shows less content. Some people on their mobile sites will display the exact same content they have on their desktop view, but sometimes you can change that and say, hey, if a device that's reading this is a smaller device, then let's present a different image. Maybe with the image is important too, because sometimes the images have words on it and you want that image and the fonts to be bigger. So you may be presenting or showing a completely different image, same image, but different font size that's larger, so people can see it on their mobile phone. A couple examples of what you can do is just very simply, you could ask some of your clients, some of your close friends, your family members, but you can ask a few people to spend basically just 1 minute. And this is the key, is just asking them real quickly to look at your site. Don't say, hey, go look at my site and look at it for an hour and give me a full page report on it. No, what you can do is just ask them, if they're just looking for 60 seconds or even 30 seconds, is what their first impression is. Did they feel confused? Was it a great looking site? Was there too much going on? You know, you can figure out all these different things, but you want to find out what their first impression is, not what their nice response is, because you want to be able to improve your site and not just feel good about your site. Another one is if they've had a bad experience, or if they say, yeah, it really isn't that great of an experience. It's very difficult to find things, or I can't read the fonts, or I'm as confused as to even what I'm supposed to do here. And another way you can do is, or something else you can do is, you can also ask them to find your most profitable service or product and see if they can do that within 1 minute or 20 seconds. And if they can't, then it could be your most profitable product or service is actually hidden too much in your site, or it's not the main focal point. So you want to bring focus back to what's profitable for you as a business owner. Number 3, you want to save money? Well, I say you can save money by investing some money. We have such a culture these days of do-it-yourself, from Home Depot to Office Max to all different types of places where you can do it yourself, including websites, WordPress, Wix, Google Analytics, all these different types of things. But it has a price. And one phrase I've coined is kind of that free has a price too. So just because something is free doesn't mean it's going to necessarily save you money. It could be more costly. But one thing is, you don't have to be a Star Wars movie. Or you don't have to be like that movie. You don't have to go on your own. A long time ago, I have a pilot's license, just a private pilot's license. And before I could go solo on my own, I really had to master the skills of flying and landing and being safe, and knowing some emergency procedures for that airplane, and also for the federal aviation regulations. So before you can go solo, you really need some help. So sometimes that means partnering with other service providers, getting some help, maybe hiring somebody as an employee to help you out with your marketing, your website. But don't try to do it all yourself, because of our society, once again, it's focusing us on doing it ourselves. And man, we can do it ourselves. We can do it ourselves. But really, what price are we paying when we do everything ourselves, and how much time are we losing in regards to the valuable things we could be putting our hands to? One of the questions you can ask is, or I'm asking, is how many web tools are even out there? And of course, I just mentioned a couple: Google Analytics, Google Webmaster Tools. There's a ton more out there if you search online, and a lot of them are good ones. But once again, if you don't even know which service to use, that's a huge problem. Also, the question is, what are you proficient at? Many people, you feel like, wow, I've used Google Analytics or whatever tool you're used to using online, and it's free, but are you really proficient at it? And if you've watched Google just over the last 3 to 5 years, you've realized that Google has actually changed a number of things about how they serve up websites, how people spam on the internet. People used to spam a ton by putting kind of invisible words, like in our case, we do, once again, web design or web development. And if companies did web development in the past, before Google caught on to this, people would spam and put a ton of words like web development, web development, web development at the bottom of their page. And you wouldn't be able to see that because their fonts would be white, which would be the same color as the background. And the only way you could see those pages is by clicking and dragging at the bottom of the page and realizing, why is there all this white space at the bottom of the page, this big huge gap or margin at the bottom? And come to find out, those are just invisible words, so to speak, invisible to us, so it wouldn't interfere with us, or wouldn't make us feel like, oh my gosh, I'm so put off by all this garbage that's at the bottom. But then Google eventually said, hey, if people are doing that, they're just putting a bunch of words in there, web development, web development, web development, they realize that's not a valuable site and that's not valuable to the user. So of course, as artificial intelligence, Google, everything else learns and moves on as you go, that you want to definitely be aware of not using spam. And I'm not really going to cover spam on here or spamming through your website, but that's just one of those factors that Google's pretty smart now with the artificial intelligence. They can also, recognize photos and your voice and answer questions. And this is all artificial intelligence. It has no human being. And once that artificial intelligence gets going, depending on how sophisticated it is, it can track your comments and questions. And if it can't answer it, it might shoot you to a real human being. But if it can answer it, it'll move right down the line and it'll keep learning as you go. So over time, these artificial intelligence engines can actually build up a huge database of answers and be very, very sophisticated. Whereas a lot of these pieces or a lot of these chat boxes or artificial intelligence pieces can actually book an appointment for you or do a number of different things, which is pretty cool. So the last part of this one bullet point also too is the number of updates that like Google alone has made over time. So if you go into Google Analytics, if you've been going there regularly over the last several years, you notice they've moved things, they've added components, they've changed the names of components and features. They've done all that kind of stuff. And I don't know if you're not in the web development or analytics market, then I don't know how you're going to stay up on things. It's the same thing as, a lot of us do it yourself. Some people may change their oil in their car. I don't personally, I've never done it, but I've done some other things that, you maintain things in your house or your car. But how many of us actually, when you get that knocking in your car, you're thinking, oh man, I'm going to open up the hood, I'm going to troubleshoot this and get, few of us do, but really we're not really good at that. So if maybe that's your hobby and you like tinkering and you like doing those kinds of things, that's probably fine. But if that's one of your main ways to operate your business, that may not be the best. Whereas more importantly, you can focus on what's worth for your time. And you got to realize that you're an expert in your own industry and you want to be spending most of your time doing that rather than spending so much of your time trying to become a web developer or an oil changer or whatever it may be, or building stuff on your house. You have to just weigh the trade-off on that. Sometimes it is going to be maybe more effective or more enjoyable for you to do it yourself, but sometimes it's a huge waste of time. And I find myself doing the same thing. Think, oh man, I can do everything. And come to find out, many times, I don't know if you've had the same thing happen, but you start off on a project, you end up finding out you don't have all the tools or the resources you need or materials. You end up going back to the store to get more. And then at the very end of it, you might have finished the project, but it's taking you 3 times as long and 3 times as much money. Or you may have to actually get an expert in there because it's so frustrating you can't figure something out and you're like, oh my gosh. Or if you're like me, your wife is yelling at you like, when is this going to be done? It's been 6 years since we've had a toilet in the house. I'm kidding. But things like that. The other question you need to ask is, what's the cost of you developing your website? What's that cost? Because, there's a price that you might pay for if you use another service provider, whether it's web development or any other types of things you do in your business. But there's a cost to everything we do. So the price may be what you pay up front, but the cost is the ongoing amount of time potentially wasted, opportunity cost for you to maybe, once again, if you're a realtor, to be able to meet with people, or if you're some type of other service provider or you provide some type of product that you could be out there selling or talking about your product rather than developing your website with all the multifaceted areas there are of a website. Of course, once again, what valuable time are you sacrificing? So don't be afraid to seek out a service provider. And I say LOL because that's kind of it might be something like I'm thinking, like a lot of us, it's like, man, I may not have the money. I may not be able to do it. Well, in that case, I guess maybe you do have to do it on your own, but try to be creative, but seek out a service provider. Number 4, is your site mobile friendly or mobile enemy? Is the enemy of mobile? Couple good examples, and a lot of people don't really think about, but we alluded to a few slides earlier, which was viewing it on different size devices. So, we have a desktop screen on the right, we have a tablet in a vertical view, you have a tablet in the horizontal, you have your mobile phone, and you have to look at it in all these different areas. Of course, once again, for the picture size, is the picture going to take up most of the website and people don't see the content? You do want to have good pictures, but you also want to have some content in there or a button, some call to action. And and also too on your mobile phone, what are the font sizes? And is it readable? Is your most profitable item, product, or service the most focused or the focal point on your website? Once again, image sizes and fonts, also button sizes. This is another key. Some people make button sizes if they're doing it themselves or they've just had their site is really old. Their button sizes may not be the appropriate size, or they're too small for somebody's thumb or finger to click on that. Or they might have a number of links very close together that it's hard to click. Man, I want to click on this link or the link right next to it, and you end up having to end up clicking the wrong link. You have to go back. You have to try and select it again. So you want to make sure your button sizes and your links have enough spacing around them so it's simple enough for people to use. Number 5, is your content oldie moldy, or is it new, or just newer? Some of the content ideas which you're probably aware of, you can get into blogs. That's a big topic lately. And of course, the question there is, how much time do I have? How do I create a blog? Once again, you can either work with a service provider, or if you search online, you can come up with a bunch of different blog ideas, topics, and so forth. Also too, do you have social interactions? I think to some degree, most people are on some type of social sites, and this can also be lives, social events or networking events. But too, if you're on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, all these different types of areas, Google Maps, reviews, all these different types of things. But wherever you are, if you're on Facebook, you can always link back to your own site, and you can share your site and other things. You don't want to do that all the time on social marketing, but every once in a while, whether it's 1 out of 8 times, 1 out of 6 times, or 1 out of 10 times, you want to link back to your website so people can focus back on your content. Also, if you go to events, you can post events on your websites as content. If you go to a networking meeting, if you have fun activities, etc., or things locally that are happening around the area that people can enjoy. Of course, you can get into podcasts, videos, YouTube, Vimeo, a number of different things. And if you have those videos, point back to your website. And a lot of people aren't maybe doing a good job of that. And you also have to tell people, hey, go to my website, check out this new cool content, or go to my website and find out more. But don't just keep people on that video and they kind of stop there or get distracted with other videos and other things. You can also publish hot topics in your industry. There's all kinds of things coming up in every industry. You just have to be a little creative about that. And you yourself probably know a number of things about your industry that other people don't know. And as solopreneurs or entrepreneurs, we tend to forget how much knowledge we have because it's, we're so used to it and it's so commonplace for us that we don't even think. But if you were to sit down and list out or just write out all the different types of things that you know, or have a voice recorder that records, you just start talking for 5 minutes about your industry or one topic on your industry, you realize how much information you have. And there's a lot of people, whether they're users or clients, don't have any idea about those types of things. Additional ideas is you can have downloadable white papers or tips or promotions or free offerings. And you also want to make sure that your content is unique content. You don't want to copy exactly the same exact words and content that some other similar or competitive website has. Because once Google goes to serve up those pages when somebody searches, how is Google going to know which one of the 500 sites to post? And if yours is one of 500, yours needs to be one that people are going to quite a bit and they're coming through Google and clicking on your site. And if yours is more popular, then Google will probably show your website more, but that's not going to be likely because there's millions and millions of websites. I don't even know how many websites. There's so many that it's not even worth counting, but it's just amazing out there. So you want to have somewhat of unique content. You can have similar content talking about the same ideas, but make it unique. Write it in your own language or change some things about that content, and just kind of express your ideas about what it is. Of course, you can repurpose your content. So if you post something on Facebook, you can link back to your website. You can also have it posted on your website, and it might be more lengthy if it's on your website, or it talks about something more pertinent in regards to your website. But if you're on maybe Instagram or Snapchat or Twitter, obviously Twitter is very short, so you're going to have a lot less content there, but use whatever content you're talking about. In our case, if we're talking about marketing design, then we can use that in multiple different areas, but we can also use that on other different things. And if you go to print, you can actually use that on a printed flyer or brochure or promotion that you're doing, and just print on demand. You can have a few on hand for an event that you're going to. Own your own content versus just having it on social or outside services. Here, I'm basically talking about that I've seen a number of stories where people mostly say, well, gee, I've got a Facebook page. Why can't I just have that? Well, number one, Google can't really index very well or search your Facebook page and all its content, so it's somewhat hidden inside of Facebook. So yeah, a lot of people are on Facebook, but Google also, like I said, serves up millions and millions and millions of searches every single day. And if your content is only on Facebook, that can be a huge problem. I was also at a networking meeting over the last several months where somebody mentioned too that, you know, their Facebook page was removed and they could not get any of their content they put all this stuff into, because either Facebook thought that their content was either inappropriate, which, you know, there are violations and guidelines that they have, and you got to make sure of that, but you want to definitely own your content. So whatever you're putting on social, try to keep that somehow, or put it on your own website, because your website you own and you have control over. But these social events or other media sites, you don't have 100% control. You feel like it when nothing happens, you know, the content stays there and there's no repercussions of it. But then when something happens or they change the rules and how they share or what they do, they pretty much own that content of yours. And if it gets lost, it's lost for good. But if you have it on your website, it's there for other users to see, even down the road. Number 6, set it and forget it. No, you can't just set it and forget it. This is not some infomercial. I can't remember if the guy's name was Ron Popeil, but he'd have the turkey, turkey contraption that would just cook the turkey. Man, you can just set it and forget it. Well, most things in life aren't that way, that you can just set it and forget it, and especially not your website. So you want to interact through the website, which both means looking at your website every couple or few months, along with your Google Analytics or whatever you tools to measure, whatever tools you have to measure the metrics and statistics of your website. And then also wherever you're pointing, like we mentioned before, wherever you're hanging out at and your clients are hanging out at, point back to your website. So if you're on social media online, or if you're at a networking event physically, still point back to your website or your other content. But in this case, you're talking about your website. So point back to your website or talk about your website. I hope you're talking about those things and resources that people can get back to. Of course, if you have videos, whether Facebook Live, YouTube, a number of different things, or webinars, in that webinar or in those videos, make sure you point back to your website. And if it's just your social site, you're going to have problems there, because once again, people have to link in and make sure they're connected, and you can't always control everything that's shown, including your Facebook ads. You know, once again, Facebook changed a lot of things in the last couple of years when they switched from pretty much being a free site, and you could market, and if you did a good job, a lot of people were getting tons and tons of hits and advertising and users and views. But then they switched and said, you got to have pay to play now. So pretty much you've got to pay Facebook money, and of course they're making billions. So they had a brilliant idea of just making Facebook free pretty much to all the users, but then eventually now they're charging all the advertisers. And just a few bucks here and there, but multiply that few bucks times millions and millions and millions of ads that are shown every single day. So make sure you're pointing back through these videos and Facebooks and YouTubes back to your website. And of course, we talked about webinars. If you're at networking meetings, this is another good time to talk about, hey, on your website, you've got this content. On your website, you've got this. And if you put a little bit of focus pointing back towards your website, people will tend to think, man, I can go back to their website, or they can call me or whatever. But if you throw in there a few times that you have your website, that's going to be very important. You can also do weekly or monthly newsletters, whether email marketing or what have you. And once again, point back to your website. And so kind of you want to interact, all these different things that are up on the slide right now, you want to interact back and forth, because Google also factors in, how are people coming to your site? How awesome is it? How connected is it to other forms of media? Number 7, the need for speed. I don't know if you've seen this bumper sticker, but I think I bought one a long time ago back in Florida, but it pretty much said, I may be slow, but I'm ahead of you. And that's kind of funny when you're the car who has that bumper sticker, because people behind you are reading it and they might even chuckle at that. But it's not funny if that's a bumper sticker that's actually on your website. So you don't want to have a slow website, because Google also is factoring in your site speed, because once again, Google is taking those searches and saying, what's the most valuable experience for our users, which is speed, because people want something that is very quick, it's effective, and if it's quick and effective, then people are going to use that, and that's what Google wants to show people. So here are some of the web tools you can use. You can use Google Developers Page Speed Insights, and once again, there's tons of tools out there, but you can type in your website and you can figure out exactly how fast your website is, or your web page, and it'll give you some numbers on that. And you can use those, and it'll give you some suggestions on what you can tweak your site for. Some other tools are AMP pages, or accelerated mobile pages, that if you're using WordPress, there's plugins for that. But it basically delivers the web page extremely fast, because it changes how it delivers that web page to people's view. So, you can use these different types of tools. You can also use Google Webmaster Tools. Once again, a lot of stuff in there. If you're not proficient at it, then once again, you may want to ask a service professional to help you out with that. Some causes of a slow website could be the images. Many people take photos on their camera, and what they actually do is they just upload those to Facebook or to your social media, and that's fine, because that's what they want. Is for you to upload high-res images, and they have huge servers, so they can serve that. But on your own website, you want to make sure you optimize it so it's set up to either 96 resolution, and it's a smaller file size, because once it hits your website, I've seen people who have like 3 megabyte images on your website, and even though they may have a fast website, it takes forever to download the photo. And you don't want that, because that's a slow experience for your customer, just trying to have to download the photo, and it may not download the rest of the page. And also, too, some little side notes, just for SEO, search engine optimization, make sure your file names are named. So don't just have image 1, image 2, image 3. Maybe you'd say, about image, or home for sale. Or if you're doing web development, web development services, or site speed, it would be the name of the image, the actual image.jpg or whatever. And then we talked about the size, and then I don't know if you're familiar with alt tags, but it's kind of I can't even think of the word is now, but it's basically user-friendly in that if somebody hovers over your image with a mouse or clicks on it, it'll tell you or highlight, give you a little phrase as to what that image is about, or if you're going to click on it, or if you're looking at it. And it also, too, helps out in site readers that read your site. So if your image has that little alt tag in the background, it can actually read that image, and you give it the little description that you want. Also, your website architecture can be a challenge, too. Many people have WordPress these days, but there's also other content management systems like WordPress, such as Wix or Joomla or on Braco or Magento. And all these different content management systems use databases. So you've got a number of things going on. They're presenting the page in both the website language, which is HTML, and they also have to interact with the database. So some of these website pieces that are in the background can actually make your site slower based upon if it's old architecture, old website and has not been updated in a while, or if you have themes that you're using that were so cool at one time and fancy, or have all kinds of animations, well, they may be using JavaScripts and different things that slow down your site. So you want to make sure that you're looking for optimized themes for your website, simple themes. You also want to make sure that your plugins are optimized. If you're looking at plugins for WordPress, you want to make sure that a lot of people are using them, that they have high ratings, and you also want to maybe search and see if it's like an optimized plugin that mentions it's actually a fast plugin that works with your site. Because some websites, especially WordPress, have a ton of plugins or widgets on them, and that slows them down. Because now if you got 8 plugins or widgets, some of them you may not be using very much, but it may slow down the site a ton. That's huge. The other issue I see with slow websites is that they're I call it frugal hosting, because sometimes you get free hosting, like with Wix and some other sites, but sometimes you're paying for maybe $3 a month or $10 a month or whatever you're paying. But sometimes you may need to pay more for that site, because sometimes you're on in most cases, a shared hosting setting. So one web server is basically like one computer, and if only your website is on it, it'll probably work very fast because it's the only website it's processing. But if that computer or web server is shared hosting, then you're sharing website hosting with a number of other websites. And sometimes there can be busy times, or if there's sites with high traffic, that's going to affect the speed of your site too, and it can slow it down. So watch out for the hosting where you're at. And just because it's cheap, once again, there's a cost to cheap and there's a cost to free. One example we had is that we had an email campaign we did for one of our clients, and we found when we looked back at the metrics, like how many people clicked on this link or on these links to get back to the website, and we found, man, not too many people did that, and we sent this out to several thousand people, and come to find out their website was too slow. So by the time somebody clicked on that link in the email, it took several seconds. So and when it took that several seconds, the people probably abandoned the page or went away like, man, this site isn't working or it's terrible. So that click was never registered on the website. So there's a huge price you're going to pay. So ideally, with your website speeds, you want your website page to load up. The first time it might take a while if it's downloading everything, but the second time it should be cached, and your website should load ideally around 3 seconds or less would be ideal. Here's some bonus tips. Have a plan, weekly or monthly, etc., to work on your website, or to have marketing being done, whether that's email marketing or reviewing your metrics and your statistics on your site to find out what's happening with your site. Because once again, things change during the different seasons or times of year, or just with the internet, and how things change around your website may affect what's going on. Or maybe you have a new competitor in town and you kind of want to know that, man, your website isn't showing as much as it used to, and let's figure that out. Once again, you want unique content. So just with the illustration, if you're a realtor, you want to have stuff about buying homes or the challenges of having multiple bids on a home, and that's a normal thing. You can educate people on it, but you want to have that in your own words. So when people search up, challenges with, having multiple bids, or how do you win a bid when you're in a multiple bid situation, you could have that in your own words and your own unique content. Another tip is that you want to have a secure connection, HTTPS, or that green padlock on your site. Many hosting companies now provide that with your web services that you're already paying, and sometimes you have to add that in, but make sure it's secured now, because now Google and the browsers are indicating that your site is not a secure connection, which basically just means that when somebody interacts with your website, that the content and data that's shared is encrypted and it's passed back and forth in a way that nobody else can read that. So you want to make sure you have that. And of course, you want to have better hosting. That's always better. Sometimes you think cheap is good, and trust me, I know, because I try to look for the lower costing things, but In this case, and in many cases, you get what you pay for. Check the reputation of your site. There's also services online where you can check the reputation of your site. Some websites I've seen have been blacklisted because either their website has been banned because you've been sending a bunch of spam emails out and people have marked your website as a poor reputation or have spammed it and it's gotten too many spams, so therefore it has a bad reputation, and even Google sometimes can show that. And if that's the case, you may not even know that, but they'll just be providing less link backs to your site or less referrals to your site. The other case that could be also when you're on a shared server, each server has an address to it or an IP address. And that if you're sharing a server with another website that has a bad reputation, that whole server could be marked as with a bad reputation. And because your website is on that server too, you're also by association marked as a bad reputation. You may not even realize that. So that may be another reason for you to change web servers or hosting companies or whatever. So check your reputation. Keep monthly backups locally on your own PC if you can. Back up your WordPress sites, your Joomla sites, your HTML sites on your own computer, because we've had companies that have lost all their data because they thought GoDaddy or Wix or whomever else was taking care of them, or Facebook, and all of a sudden something got changed or something glitched, and it's not their responsibility. They're not responsible for that. So keep either monthly backups, or if you don't change your site very much because you're not following any of these tips I've just given, then you could back it up maybe once a quarter or something, or maybe once a year if you're really not going to do any of this stuff. But have a locally owned copy of your website, because when something breaks or something gets lost, you have a plan that you can get it back up quickly, or you can work with a professional like us and we can get you back up within a day or so, most likely. You also want to measure and adjust, and of course rinse and repeat. So measure regularly, whether it's, I would say reasonably, you could do it on a monthly basis. Some things may not change, some things might, but you'll be able to see that much quicker and be able to adjust to that, and maybe once again see that, man, the wrong people are coming to my site. They're hitting my keywords, or my keywords or key phrases are showing up, and these people are abandoning my site. So they come here real quick, but then they leave right away. So we can figure out, what landing pages they're hitting, how long they're there, and if they're there, for more than 3 seconds, then we know that they were planning to come to my site and we're actually looking at my site, which is a good thing. But if they're there for only 3 seconds and you've got a lot of site exits showing in your metrics, then you want to make sure that you take care of that. And of course, be consistent. Whatever you do, be consistent. And that's like anything, whether it's a dating relationship, with our spouses, with our website, with our business, with our sales. Everything has to be consistent, because if you don't take care of it, whether it's exercising, eating, any of that, eventually you're going to lose it. So you got to use it or you lose it. Oh my, I think my website is alive. So thank you very much, and I certainly appreciate being here.
Thanks, Corey. That was awesome. Hey, I got one quick question for you.
Yes.
Where do you go to check your reputation of your website?
You can go online. There's some services, and I can send links to whomever would like. But I found a few services where you can check. And the interesting thing about that is that your reputation, there's several services out there. Google is one of the services. You can also have, I believe Norton has a service, McAfee, and there are several other ones, Securi, that you can go to, but many times they have different databases that they use to report your site. So there's not just one place to check it. Could be a multiple, top dogs that are out there that are watching your site that report to a number of other services. So Google's definitely a big one that you want to check your reputation on. Google is number one. I can send, like I said, the people who would want that, a link to that. And then there's other sites too. We found that, man, Google's fine, but then there's this other site that's being banned. And because one of our clients was being banned by this other service we weren't aware of, they all of a sudden cannot send emails to their client because their emails are being marked as spam. So every time their email came to their client server, their emails were being blocked and they couldn't figure out why. So sometimes there's a few different services. Sometimes you can get it real quick, but sometimes you need to investigate a little further.
Cool. All right, well, thank you very much. I don't know if there's any other questions, if you want to type them in the chat box. If not, we're gonna end this. We were live on Facebook, so hopefully if you missed it, you can go there. So.
I do see one question here in the chat box.
All right.
It's from Christine, where she says her website doesn't have the secured sign and the HTTP request. So how do you fix that? One thing is you can go to your hosting company and ask them if they can just place a secure certificate on your site so it's connected, so it's connecting securely for people. Or if they don't do it right off the bat, then maybe you have to pay for that. And that's something we can also help people with too, that a lot of the secure certificates that you put on your website have to be paid for, and we can help install them if you need that. But I would go to the hosting company first, because maybe they'll do it for free for you. In this case, it would be much more free and cheaper for you to do it. But in some cases, if they don't do it, then we can definitely help out with that and try and do it at a lower cost, especially for people we know. So we can help you do that. And usually that only takes about a day or 2 days, just depending on what's happening, but we can figure that out. And we've done that for a number of our clients.
Okay, well, with that, we'll end it here. So Corey, thanks again, and we'll see you at the top, buddy.
All right. Thank you very much, Alan. Have a great day.
See ya.